to the No BS Short-Term Rental Podcast, an unfiltered look into the global vacation and short-term rental industry.
I'm Mateo Bradford.
And I'm John Stokinger.
And this is our podcast. We bring the right people to the table at the right time, giving you an inside view and take on the short-term rental industry like no other podcast can. All right. Episode number 3. We're back. How you doing, John?
I'm doing great, man. It feels so good. With the 3 episodes, no bullshit podcast. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited about our guests. I'm excited about our roadmap, where we're going with this. You and I have talked. We got some really exciting guests coming up, and we got an exciting guest today.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I have the pleasure and the honor of introducing good friend, industry veteran, and just all around great guy, Mr. Gerard Lester. Formerly, I'll let you run down your resume, Gerard. But I know you've been here so actually, this is going to be an informal resume. So as you can see, I'm in Portland, right? So when I'm going to be doing in different places, I'm going to kind of put the map on the background, so you'll be able to know where I am. So this is the Easter egg, John. I'm not going to say it again.
All right.
We'll just kind of have to see it moving forward. But the root of this story is Gerard and I have Portland roots. And Portland is a great, vibrant community, small community, but very small community, because I didn't meet Gerard in Portland. I actually met Gerard in Orlando in the industry at my first VRMA conference. And this is prior to the whole Rented days. This is prior to everything. Well, no, this is early in the Rented days. And so, but prior to Gerard coming to Rented. And so we talked, and, Portland's small. So, hey, where'd you work? What do you know? So, as most of you don't know, my first job coming out of school was starting a school in the neighborhood I grew up with in Portland. That was actually my first real job out of school. And it was part of this network. It was called, the LaSalle Network. Well, long story short, Gerard was connected to one of the schools in the city. So long story short, we had, connections through the neighborhood, connections through the school. He lives literally 5 blocks away from my house in Portland. And so, Gerard and I just have had these connections and have just built, a great friendship ever since. And that went to Rented and from what he's doing now. And so, into what we're doing now. So I wanted to get him on the show. He's a great guy, has a great perspective. He's, talk about the culture in the industry, some of the best that we have in the industry. So, Gerard, welcome to the No BS Short-Term Rental Podcast, man.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, guys.
We're glad
Mateo,
to
all
have
you
you.
needed to say was, do you want to be on a podcast tomorrow? Thought you'd never ask. Yeah, so here I am. Again, Mateo and I met. It was in Orlando, and I was happy to be standing next to him. I made small talk. It turns out we had some deep connections going back from the place where we lived. And again, he talks about the school that he started was actually run by people who were my educators when I was in high school. And so we knew a lot of the same people. It was great. It was an obvious connection that Mateo and I should be working together at some point. So, we worked together at Rented. I came into the vacation rental industry years ago at Vacassa when that company was really really made a month before I came on, they'd really made a strong decision to say, we are going to be an international company, not just a regional company. It was a really exciting time. I worked on teams opening up markets all across the country. And it was great. It was people who were new to the industry, all working for each other. And it was such a fascinating time when innovation was coming into an industry that had been really, really small. And not small in a bad way, but just really close knit too. And so when I started going to conferences, I was meeting people who looked at Vacassa, the company I was working at, as they were kind of scared of it. They were wondering, what is this that's coming into this industry? And the culture that I was experiencing at Vacassa was really strong. It was, again, people just working side by side. Let's figure this thing out. Let's see how we can do. Let's see how we can make better products for owners and for guests, and build a great culture that we all want to be part of. And that's what I love about the vacation rental industry and being part of it. My work at a large company like that is over. And that was interesting. A year ago, the industry was really teetering and falling apart. And so I departed. And it was really obvious that it was time to go. It was time for me to look for other opportunities and not be part of a huge corporation. So I'm doing other things now. We can talk about that later, but we want to get to the news, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to kind of touch on one point that you just said there. You're talking about how it's exciting and it was, it was new and it was fresh. And, how many years ago approximately we talking 7, 8, 9 years ago?
I guess it was 7 years ago. It was 2014.
Okay. So the interesting thing, if we're here and we're kind of I think Mateo and I look at this, we're kind of part of the newer regime of, of thinking in the industry. And then if we go back to the old guard, when before it was even vacation rentals, before it was short-term rentals, that's 15 years ago. So you're kind of in the middle, and it was still the Wild West back then. It was still, just pioneering, and it still is today. And that's what's so exciting about our industry. It really hasn't changed in what we're doing. It's just the scope and the breadth and what is the tech is what is changing, and it's making it accessible to everybody. So I absolutely love it. But yeah, let's talk news. I mean, some big things happened this last week since the last time we were on here. From Guesty and Sonder being the two biggest ones. Teo, what are your thoughts on the Guesty raising raising that amount of money?
I think so. So it's interesting. I have two takes on this, right? The business side of me is like, this could be very interesting, right? Like, I know the folks at Guesty well. They're enterprising. They've done a lot with bringing tech platforms and things into the space. So, but again, they're part of a wave, right? Like we've seen a wave of money coming into this industry, especially the past 4 or 5 years. Right, the amount of money that's been dumped into this industry has been crazy. So, like, when are we going to start to see the fruits of what that produces? But since we're a culture podcast, my question always is, what is this going to do to the culture? Right, like, what does this do to the industry? And again, like, what perspective are we going to take with this? Is this going to be something that the technology changes the culture, or is it going to be something that the people, use this technology to either keep or create what the culture is going to be moving forward? And I think that's something that we as the industry are going to define, are going to be able to define that as. But that all changes, right? When you got $2.2 billion on your back, you're gonna put your footprint down. You're gonna make some earth shattering.
That's what's
right. But again, I doubt they'll be the only one, right? SPACs are the hottest thing going, and our industry is still the hottest thing going in this space. And I'm not afraid to say that. I think the numbers back that up. And I think it's going to continue to be that way for a while. So, my question to you guys is, from a cultural perspective, from what you've seen and where do you think it's going to go? I honestly, I can't say. I know it's going to change it. I know it's going to change. I know it's going to change it significantly, but I think it's going to create a broader lane. It's kind of like broadening the highway, right? When you go from like 2 to 6 lanes, taking a highway to a freeway, you always think that it's going to create all these things, but oftentimes, what does it do? It just creates a different type of logjam, right? And it creates, more of a mix, or more of a mess. So I'm super interested to see the way that this goes, and I'd love to hear what you and Gerard think about that.
My brief, my initial thought on all this and all this money being thrown at Sonder, announcing that they're going to be going, public with a 2.2 billion evaluation, Guesty raising 50 million. These are just this week. The news, every week there's something different. But does it change the focus? Does it change? What is that money being used for? And who, now that this money is thrown at it, who's making the decisions? And the ones that are making those decisions, mm-hmm. do they have the best interest in mind? And what exactly is the best interest? There's so much different directions you can go here. Is the best interest just to grow and get bigger and to be, to have a larger footprint? or stranglehold, or however you want to look at it, or, there's so many different directions. What are your thoughts, Gerard?
I think companies like Guesty have done a great job in making themselves really well known and making their platform a clear choice for a lot of people. I think when money comes into an organization like that, what it tells me is that people need a place to put money, right? They're looking for a place to store money, where they're going to get a return, where they're hoping to get a return.
Right. I
think what I see there's going to be more spreadsheets and more analysts and more data, and that's going to be used in a lot of ways to squeeze people who've been in the business already on a smaller scale. So I think, to your point, John, more tech, more innovation. I don't know who that serves, quite honestly. I think if it really solves problems that guests and owners are having, then I think that's fantastic. But I think if the problem that is being solved is how to squeeze more valuation to make an exit, that's the activity that I've seen with a lot of people coming into the industry on the leadership level. And I use some quote marks there. I don't do that a lot, but
yeah.
We're on the radio, so I'm using quote marks.
Yeah.
I think leadership long-term is a challenge in this. So it seems like more of a race to valuation and sale.
And I think you hit on a key point, Gerard, because one of the points I was just thinking about when you were starting to talk was it is the leadership. Like, we've seen lots of money thrown at lots of different players in the industry, and it hasn't always equaled success. So again, I think it does boil down to the leadership and the strategy that they have, and the strategies and the cultures that these companies create, because money does give you power, but it doesn't always equal success. And, I think we've been seeing that, right? Because, there's people that got a lot of money and didn't make it. There's a lot of people that, got a lot of money and are struggling in our industry and in the space. And so, again, who leads, I think, is important. And, it brings up my next kind of point. And my next question is, like, are we going to start seeing race to IPO, right? Like, now with other people, like now, Airbnb went, Sonder's about to go, others are in the space. I'll let you guys kind of talk about that, because there's been names that names in the industry that have been talking about going public for a while that still haven't gone. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens next. Do they sharpen their tools and wait, or do they hit the gas on the accelerator and expedite the process to ensure that they're not last in line? And is that something we're even going to see? So that's what I want to know. That's what I want to see.
I don't have a great finger on the pulse of that. If I were to have my, I'd like to see how these, evolve. And if I was in a position that, in a leadership position where my company could, potentially be, going that direction, I would kind of put the brakes on it a little bit, just, personally, just to kind of see where the chips fall and see there's going to be fallout, and I don't want to I kind of want to go back to our previous point just real quick, and without derailing this, I was thinking about, we're talking about, you mentioned success, and you mentioned, and my question is, what is success? How are we actually gauging success? Because some of the, I'm in the tech space, I'm selling property management software for my company. Okay. And some of our competitors, which are doing great things, are also, they're part of these buy-ups, and they're part of these larger companies that are doing it for the betterment. And again, okay, I'm going to do it, Jared, using some air quotes here, doing it for the betterment of the industry and for growth, and for putting an amazing product together for their clients, who are, to giving them access to these better tools, and all in one inclusive, this great example of I derailed myself here, but long story short, you know, is success for the companies that are doing this together, or is, how do we gauge success, or is it truly for the clients, or what are the clients getting? I mean, I think personally, if the clients aren't happy, it can't be a successful thing. And so, I'm sorry to derail it back to the IPO.
No, I actually agree. I think at the end of the day, it's the customers that make success. Like, without customers, none of this matters, right? Like, at the end of the day. And so I think, you know, it'll be identifying which customers, right? And who are our customers? Because I think there's going to be, you know, you have to understand where your market is, you know, and what you're doing in that market. And again, if we get into this space where there's lack of diversity and there's very few players with very few choices, it's not necessarily great for the industry, right? Because, you know, you'll have the institutions that stand, niche players will still pop up, right? Like, it actually, you know, you see that quite a bit. You know, if something gets stale within the industry, whatever's kind of fresh and new and can stay in that space will thrive. They won't thrive at scale, but it will still thrive. And that may be good for some people. And I think that's going to be good for the industry to a certain extent. But there's something just different about hospitality in this space. It doesn't necessarily just, I don't know if it's ever had to accept, and maybe with the hotels and vacation rentals back in the day, I have to, you know, do a little more history on kind of like what that's looked like and how that has kind of, have those kind of gone back and forth before. But I think typically this industry is resilient, and there's something that just doesn't lend to the broader scale, and especially when you're talking about vacation rentals, right? In that space, you know, you want that to feel like home. You want that to be not the standard and not everybody's, you know, not the same thing, not cookie cutter. And typically when you're optimizing and you're building, you know, like you said, John, success for profit, right? Or profit being the success margin, then, you know, that's a different story. And yeah, I think you bring up a really good point around, and I'm very interested to see how that's going to play out. But honestly, I have no clue.
You guys are really rolling this back to culture, which is what I love, and I think it's so interesting. Now, I come from a perspective. The last work that I did when I worked for Vacassa was really working on culture within the company, as the company was absorbing the entire Wyndham organization, right? The Wyndham Vacation Rental organization, bringing a lot of new people with industry experience, much more of a hotel type experience,
right,
into the company. So how do you merge those cultures? Those are the things that I was working on and really interested in. I think, to talk about what success is, from my perspective and some of the work I was doing in culture, it's around people asking themselves, individuals who are employees and guests and owners, asking themselves these questions: am I doing meaningful work?
Absolutely.
Am I rewarded for the work that I'm doing? Do I feel secure in knowing that I have a place here? And so those are really big questions. Those are world questions too. Those are not just business questions, I think. So, which is my jam. That's really where I am. And I'm working with a consulting group called the Taproot Group, doing that kind of work with organizations. That's one of my sideline projects, which I'm really excited about. So that gets to be that question: where's that rub, right? Of are we more interested in growth, in the growth of our valuation, or are we more interested in the growth of the people and the organizations that make up this industry? And I think from what I saw at Vacassa over the time that I was there, 2 different iterations over the period of 6-7 years, it was super interesting, because there's always that conversation of, okay, we've got to grow. This is it. This is our opportunity. And this is a growth industry. This is a growth company. Our job is to grow at all costs. And then there's that other side that says, okay, we used to have a really great team here where people cared about each other and worked for each other. They felt like they were doing meaningful work. They felt rewarded, and they were secure in knowing that they had a place to go, they had a place to be. And there was that huge dynamic. And I had to wrestle with that all the time to understand that there's an opportunity for growth, and that growth opportunity is not going to last forever.
Right.
That somebody else is going to step in if you don't. And so I think that's kind of the story of the industry and what happened over that period of time.
Well, and so, like, coming from you, are they mutually exclusive? like, do we have to continue to look at it as one over the other, right? Like at the end of the day, like, and you two are prime examples of what I think, I want to talk about, right? John and Gerard, you both do things for our industry from a cultural perspective, whether it's your art project, John, whether it's, shout out to Cliff, what you and Cliff are doing, Gerard, helping the housekeepers and actually showing, who we are as a culture and what can be done regardless of success, right? Because success on the monetary side, like success on the business side, allows you the resources to do good things within the culture, right? But I think you also have to have that other balance and that drive or that deliberate intent of keeping a certain culture and putting the resources behind keeping that culture intact, right? Because again, I think those things have to go together. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. You have to have one over the other. I think they can go together, but I think it's going to take individuals demanding that these organizations do these things, or doing like you all do and just set the tone and just do it. And then, see people support on the back end. You see where I'm going with that, John? Like,
yeah, definitely. I think the interesting thing is, we first and foremost, our industry isn't going anywhere, it's just growing, and that's not going to change. Okay, we know that, and COVID has solidified that, and it's made it even stronger. I think that with all this movement for success in a monetary evaluation, it's making it possible for or important for smaller / niche / outside the box thinking companies and or people to go ahead and, all right, how do we compete with this? How do we go ahead and make ourselves stand out in the industry? And by doing that and having that equilibrium, that balance between, it's almost, and I don't want to say good and evil, because it's definitely not that. It's just two different mindsets at the industry, but having that balance is a positive thing for our industry. And it's positive competition between companies, but it also gives the traveler a vast different ways they can go ahead and experience short-term rentals. And, which I think is a great transition into this niche travel market that is exploding right now. And, and I definitely want to talk about that and talk about and get Gerard's take on what this looks like and what he thinks about it. And you too, Mateo, like, where is this going? And is it here to stay? I think that, is there a bubble on this niche, especially this mobile niche, or is this going to be a forever thing? I'm excited to hear your takes on it.
I think there's going to be new opportunities that arise out of that on that niche front. I've looked at that myself. One of the things that I wanted to do for a long time when I was at Vacassa, and I talked about this with friends I was there with, was, what if we take this and put it on wheels? And we looked at the camper van idea. We didn't move on it for a long time, but when I left Vacassa a year ago, I thought, what, now's the time. So a couple of partners and I, we're now renting camper vans. We work with an organization called Wander Vans, and we started an operation here in Portland where I live, and it's going great. People love it. The response from consumers has been fabulous. Through the pandemic, they see it as a way to socially distance and travel, and that's been really cool. It's been a wonderful thing to be part of. I'm all about adventure, and so this is a great place for me to be, where I feel rewarded from the experiences that people have. I feel like I'm doing valuable work in offering people these great experiences, and I feel like I have a place to be. And so that's, to me, that's been successful too. But I think also Mateo and I are working on a project where we're working with some developers in bringing a boutique hotel out of mothballs. It's been closed for the last year because of COVID. Yeah. And the response from people is they're finding us because they're hungering for something a little bit different than standardization. That the standardization that creeps in from the analysts and the spreadsheets and private equity, it just feels different to people. And so there's always going to be something new that people are looking for. And I think the technology that you see coming through the vacation rental industry, short-term rental industry, is always going to be creating new opportunities.
Yeah. And I also think, so it's interesting also, the innovation. Like, we think of innovation and we think of technology and tools, but what about the innovative way that we're changing the industry? Like the glamping idea, it's not a new idea, but the innovation going around this glamping in what's been going on in the past couple of years in this industry, including the vans. I think I saw something today that like Camper World is going to start renting out RVs as short-term rentals now, right? As well. Wander vans, like, even though they're different in that space, two of the same kind of concept, two very different ways of doing things, right? And so when I, personally, I love all this new stuff that's coming out. I love tree houses. I love shipping container homes in the desert that, again, it's about creating these experiences and bringing that innovation to the industry. I think there's so much more room for that. And I think that you're going to continue to see that side of our industry just explode because, number one, people are still going to be traveling locally, right? Not everyone has the ability to just hop on an airplane and go to Europe right now, or hop across the country and go somewhere else, but they can hop in a van or hop in their car and go to these places that are in and around, where they live or relatively close, and have these amazing experiences. And so I think like that's where we're going to see a lot of the new innovation is these cultivated experiences that are, I saw something the other day but it had its own waterfall and pool and, deck layout. And I was just like, man, I would be there now if I could. And I would stay there for a while if I could. But that's what I love to see. And that's the innovation, also the other side of innovation that I think, we're going to see a lot more growth. And I hope will be another kind of lane for success for people who are interested in or have great properties or have great, properties or great experiences that they can build in for the people who want this. And we see that people want this. The demand is there.
Yeah, the experiences, the adventure. I mean, this isn't a new thing, but it is a thing that is utilizing and taking this opportunity and springboarding off it. Companies like Explory have been doing this for a while and offering experience and doing a very good job with it. And their business model is ebbed and flowed with the times. And their team is putting is partnering with some great things. And shout out to Explory. Unintentional shout out. But I mean, there's a lot of people doing some great things in tours. That that the whole tour industry is absolutely exploding right now. Great, looking at this, these are all drive destinations, that we're talking about. We're talking about stuff here in the continental US right now, but we're in Europe a lot, same thing. It doesn't really, if you don't have to hop on a plane and you're going to give your family or your partner or whatever an adventure, an experience outside. I mean, and that's where everything's kind of moving towards. And I absolutely love it.
Well, it's interesting because, like, in Gerard, I want you to speak to this now and what you guys are doing, what you see in Wander Van, because I'd love to get your perspective on this. It's the home. What I was getting at is the home is going to be the experience now. Like, wherever you're going is going to be the experience now. So it's not just the house, right? It's the tree house and everything that's in and around it, right? And or it's the ability to have a van and take it to all these different places. So wherever you go, that's an experience in that space. Like I think the other side of experience, like planned experiences, will grow too. But I think we're also going to see a transition and shift of, well, how do I differentiate my property now? And what can I do to create this experience? I saw something the other day that was like, hey, we have these pods in the middle of the woods and you can't bring your cell phone, or you won't get cell service here. And so their whole niche is like, you're going to come here and be immersed in nature. And if you don't want, if you're looking for Wi-Fi, this is not your spot. So, and to me, like that, to somebody who wants to, you've had meditation retreats and silent retreats and stuff like that. But now for people who are looking for that, that's a great experience for them, right? And it's not necessarily about, what you've planned for them there. It's about being there, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, are you talking about Rome? It's Corey Weather's company, Rome, as far as the Trailers with no cell service.
I think this was a European company.
Okay, there's one out west here. I've been affiliated with a guy named Corey.
I'm not surprised by that at all.
His company's called Rome, and they do these great little trailers, but they park them and they create this scene that people are really attracted to, and there's no service, and there's specifically no service. I love it. Honestly, that's where I would go. I think for me, when I think about the van work that I'm doing, it's about setting up the opportunity. I think people have this idea based on Instagram, right? Based on the images, right? I want that image. I want that experience that sits in that image right there. That sunset, that sunset from the van, looking out over the ocean. And so people go after that, right? They seek that, but they find something different. That's what I love about it. It's really all about adventure. I tell you what, I can't wait, guys. I can't wait to really welcome back international travel. That's what I'm really looking forward to. I mean, I love hosting people. Look, I host people from Florida and New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and they come here and it's a different world. They come out west and it's a different world. But I really can't wait to welcome people back internationally, and that comes from my very early travel when I was a young man and did a trip to India and Nepal and Thailand, and everywhere I went, the way people treated you as a guest was really impactful for me. And that's what I want to see in our industry, is to focus on, get back down to the hospitality. Right. And I know that hospitality takes focus, it takes effort, it takes training and the right people. And I think sometimes that's what's lost in the race to profitability and the race to an exit plan. I think if I were an investor in private equity, I'd really want to look under the hood of some of these companies. And I think what you find is interesting. At the other end, I think investors are incredibly short-term. They're short-sighted. They're really just looking to piggyback on the success of the amazing success that Airbnb has encountered, right? And you look at private equity like Silver Lake, who tripled down on Airbnb, Expedia, and Vacassa, and other private equity firms are wondering how they get a piece of this. And so that's what you're going to continue to see in the industry. And then you're going to see startups. You're going to see because of the technology, you'll see new interesting things continue to pop up.
Yes, it's
the future topic, John.
What's that?
Is that future topic?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Topic.
Yeah.
I'm stumbling here, but where I feel, and I want to make sure this is clear, that there are definitely, I think everyone comes into this industry to do the right things. I think that's how everything is started. Everyone, they excited, they want to go ahead and do the right things, and and I think a lot are still doing that, and it's super exciting to see that, and I love knowing that when I put my head down at night, I personally feel like I'm doing the right things for the industry, and I know you both do, and I know the majority of us are, and so how does that feel, and where do you want to take it as a company? And we're gonna see how it all shakes out.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this has been fantastic. Gerard, I want to, do you have any final words of wisdom you want to go ahead and share with our listeners today?
The final ones.
This isn't like your last.
You know what? I think it's just, I've been really focused for the last year, really a little bit outside of the industry and focusing on building some other things again. Like I said, my van business that I have 2 great partners that I'm working on that with, that I really love. It's called Wander Vans, and it's our Portland branch of Wander Vans. But I'm meeting really interesting people who all talk about, like Jake Halpert, Transformational Travel Council, Corey Weathers at Rome Beyond, people like that I've been able to, people I associated with when I was really in the vacation rental world, but I didn't have the bandwidth to really work with them. The Taproot Ventures, as well as what I'm working on, really working on belonging and inclusion in organizations. And so these are some of the things that that I wanted to work on while in the industry that I'm working on now. And now I'm just getting back into associating with people in the industry. So, hey, it's been a while, people, and good to see and hear from you again. So, yeah, I'm open for conversation. How about that?
And that's the start of lots of great things, right? And I hope that, especially to everyone out there listening, this is what we want to do. We want to spur these conversations. So, please join in. John, are we putting like our email and stuff like that for people to send like feedback and questions like that?
Yeah. Next steps, we're getting there.
Yeah.
We're going to be putting a newsletter together. We're going to be putting an official website together. Baby steps here, 3rd episode. And we, I think Mateo wears like 5 hats. I think I wear 5 as well.
How many?
I love this, you guys. Thank you for doing this. I just think this is, I didn't really know what to expect, quite honestly. And this is refreshing that you guys are focusing on culture in the industry. I think it's interesting to a lot of people. Awesome. And it may not be to private equity. It may not be to those who have a different goal in mind, and that's okay. I just think there's so much to be gained through culture that creates value, long-term value, not necessarily short-term value. And so, making that investment in culture is really challenging for organizations who are short-sighted, operating out of fear. So it takes leadership. It really takes leadership to say, this is the kind of organization we're going to be. Not, I just brought in a management team who's going to get us to an exit plan, and then you're not going to see us anymore. Well, which is subtext and the reality that you see in a lot of these companies.
Well, I think it's interesting. And one last parting shot on that end, I would love to get some private equity people in here and have a conversation around what their idea and what their thoughts are around building culture. Because I feel like that's going to be changing too. I think with seeing the success of others and like independent players in the game, would love to have that conversation and see that happen. So, if anyone out there is listening that's in that space, hit us up. We'd love to bring you into the culture conversation.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Gerard. Next week, we have the honor of High B&B is going to be joining us. Elizabeth Becker from High B&B is going to be joining us next week. So we're excited to have her on the show. So again, stay tuned, download, like, share, do whatever you do with all this stuff. Link in the comments below. I have no idea what I'm saying.
Like the video.
But thanks so much. We had a great time. I appreciate you being our 2nd official guest on the show, Gerard.
Yeah, G. All right. There you go, brother.